Hello guys, so today we will be starting with the object-oriented programming lab assignments. So in this lecture we will be discussing the general prerequisites or the introduction things which will be required for the future lectures. So let's just directly dive into it. OOP, which is nothing but the object-oriented programming, revolves around the concept of object. So first of all, what is the object? So the mobile or the laptop on which you are currently watching this video, that is an object. The table, chair, or the bed on which you are currently sitting, that is an object. So object is nothing but an day-to-day thing around you which you can touch or feel. So basically, this in general sense we can call it as objects. In broader sense, there is an whole general definition, but we won't go through it. For our general programming sense, we'll just use random examples such as car, bike, this laptop, mobile phone, or anything which you would require. So mostly, so the programming which is connected or related to objects and revolves around it, or as the name suggests, programming is object oriented. So we consider object as the main thing in this kind of programming. So this style of programming is called as object oriented programming. So here basically let's just understand this with a simple example. So whenever an architect creates an building, so whenever you want to create a building, what you do is you basically go to an architect and ask to create a blueprint for that building. So blueprint is nothing but a general structure which that building will follow. So basically, using a single structure of the building, what you can do is if you assume, okay, so if you just assume this is some kind of an blueprint of the building, so using this, what you can do is you can create multiple such buildings. So architect can create a single blueprint and you can create multiple buildings using that single blueprint. So blueprint is nothing but a general structure by which the building can be made. Similarly, in object-oriented programming, we create a class which is which resembles the blueprint, and the objects are these individual unique things which we have created from that blueprint or the class. So if we generally write it down, then class is a general representation, and object is an unique entity created by it. Unique entity created by this class. So this is the general sense which we use. So classes and objects are the most fundamental things which are used in object-oriented programming. So here for defining a class in C++, we use a keyword which is called as class, and then we give the class name whichever we want. So class name, and then our normal curly brackets opening and closing, and here will be all the data whichever you want to keep. So this can be called as the syntax for creating a class. So similarly, for creating an object using this class, what we can do is, so syntax for object initialization or object creation. So let's just write it object for now. So here the class name. So basically, if we just resemble it with creation of a variable, so what we will do is data type, then variable name, and then the value. So basically, we use something like this. So similarly, here too, we use something similar. So first of all, here explicitly data type is not mentioned. So what we use is the class name. So basically, we are creating some new data structure in which we can store these things. So if you have a general idea about the C programming language, there we use something called as structures. So these structures are user-defined data structures, data collection in which we store multiple things. Similarly, class can also store multiple data items, but in the classes we can also include the methods or the function class methods. So similarly here, data type is changed by the class name, then the object name similar to variable name, and then the value whichever we want to give. Or if we just talk about the initialization, then we can just remove this. So this is just initializing the class, initializing an object from an class. So this is the basic syntax for creating an object. So now let's just see what all things will be included in the class as we just saw. So class generally contains two things, which are class methods and properties. So basically, if we consider a simple example of, let's consider a mobile class. So each mobile is created from an blueprint, and same. Let's assume an uh, mobile, let's say Apple 14. So currently the Apple 14 consists a single blueprint. So a single blueprint was made for the Apple 14, that this would be the kind of structure for the Apple, and using this they create multiple units, individual unique units of that iPhone, so iPhone 14. So this blueprint is basically the class, and these are the objects. Similarly, what we will do is we are considering that same scenario here. So here we are considering a mobile, which is Apple 14. So here what we'll be doing is the properties. We'll be segregating the properties and methods. So properties are basically some static data regarding that class. Properties can be called as data. So what does the iPhone contains? So iPhone contains the battery amount. So battery amount would be some kind of data. The screen size would be some kind of data for the mobile itself. And then the operating system, either it is Android, or if we are considering iPhone, then it would be Mac. But yeah, if in more broader sense we consider, then it may be Android or it may be iOS. So similarly, then there are multiple things. There is screen size, then resolution, then camera type, camera number, camera length. So these are all the properties. So basically the data regarding that object or that class. And similarly, if we talk about the methods, then methods are the actions which we can perform using that class or that object. So here, what we can do with the mobile, we can call, we can text or message, we can then play games, we can do lot of things. So this would be the broader classification of what are the two things consisting in the mobile class. First of all is the properties. So these are the properties that which kind of OS it has, what is the battery amount or the battery storage capacity, then the screen size, the resolution, the width and height, and etc. And the methods would be calling. To call would be a method, to text or to SMS would be a method, to play games would be a method, and this would be some kind of example. So going more deep, let's just continue this example and create a simple class. So you would get more things. So let me just go to our text editor, and here you can see. So let's just save this file. Yeah. Now let's just put our boilerplate code, which is hash include IO stream, and then using namespace standard basic template, then int main, and yeah, yes, let's just keep this. So while we are declaring a class, we will declare outside of the main function. So we won't declare it inside this main body. We will be declaring outside of the main body. So let's just declare a class. So the syntax was class, then class name, let's say mobile, and while then the curly brackets. So this was the basic thing to create an mobile class. So here let's just use some properties. So which are the data elements, or we can call it, we can simply call it as variables inside the class. So I want an integer, let's say battery. So how much amount the battery has. Then we would need let's say string model. So the model name, let's take model underscore name, and then let's take teacher screen size, or let's take height and integer. Instead of integer, let's take it as float because it may be a decimal point number. Width 6.5, 5.3, etc. Yeah, so these are the properties which we can keep in the mobile. So let's just initialize this with 0, and it isn't compulsory to initialize, but for now let's just initialize it with something. So this would be a basic blueprint of the mobile. So if we have to create an object from that, we'll use mobile, then m1, and let's just take new mobile. So this is, we have to give the parenthesis too. So using like this, we can instantiate an object or initialize an object. So here, let's just print the m1 dot. So basically, if we have an object and we need to retrieve its property, or we need to access its property or the methods, we can use the dot operator. So first of all, the object name. So here we have m1 dot. Dot would be allowing us to access the properties or the methods from that mobile class. So m1 dot, I have to access, let's say battery. Let's use battery and enter. If we execute this, here we can see battery or file spelling mistake. And okay, so yeah, here you can see an error declared private here. So let's just discuss two things more, so you will get a clearer idea. I was thinking I would discuss this later, but as okay, let's just start. So here, let's just move code again back here. So now our mobile class contains some values. So then then there was height and width, and the model name. So basically, these datas which we are storing inside the mobile class, or the methods which you are storing, which is consisting inside this mobile, can be of three types. So basically, it can be segregated onto three types. First one is public, second one is private, and third one is protected. So basically, what does public do is, if the data member, so these are the members and it consists data, so we can call it as data members. So if these data members are public, are noted as public, then what we can do is, it can be accessed. So we will directly write the accessing. So it can be directly accessed from either same class, or we can put it everyone. So everyone can access these data members. So there is no restriction. But sometimes if we assume we are storing some bank information, so it is highly classified, so we can't access it. So I shouldn't be able to access the data of some other person. So here we have to create some security layers, or we have to restrict the access of some data. So similarly, this feature is provided by the classes, and it is called as encapsulation. So encapsulation is an feature from the object-oriented programming which allows us to capsulate, or to segregate or restrict the some part of data which you don't want to show to external user. So using these three uh, access specifiers, we can specify which access which restrictions should we implement. So basically, public means everyone can access. Private means only itself, only the same class or itself can call it, that class itself can access that data. And protected means same class and the derived class can access this data, protected data. So here now you would be thinking what is derived class and all. So we will cover this as we move on further. But for now, we can just copy the same class into some other name. So just we can use the we can just inherit the properties of the parent class into some other class. So we'll discuss this in more depth later. But for now, just as and just think it as a copy of the same class. So basically, we are creating a copy of the initial parent class or the initial mobile class, and you adding some more features. So kind of that can be called as a derived class. Or this whole concept is separated into an inheritance topic, which we will discuss later. But for now, the main thing is the access specifiers, which is public, private, and protected. So these three are the main access specifier which you can use for the data element. So default is the private. So as you can see in the error message 2, they have mentioned we have declared these data members as private. So this is default. So we have to change this. So let's move back to our text editor. And to change, basically what you have to do is whichever data elements you have to keep as public, you can just specify here public and colon. Public and colon would then initialize all these. So all the things below the public would be termed as public. So now if we execute, okay, yeah. After the class, we have to append and semicolon. I always forget this. So basic, let me just write down the class syntax again. So use multi-line command. So class, then the class name, then the curly brackets, and after the curly brackets you have to give a semicolon. So this is basic syntax. Here you can add any data member and then the access specifier too. So access specifier, then semicolon, and the data members. So these spaces are just given for visual purposes to look nicer, but yeah, you can directly write it one below that. But now if we execute this, execute, and what is happening is conversion from mobile non-scalar type. Okay, so here I just got confused a bit. So I used this thing. So here what we are getting is error conversion from mobile asterisk to non-scalar type mobile requested. So basically, if you have learned C++ and you have an basic idea, then whenever you see an asterisk, that is basically a pointer. So if you don't know what is pointer, then you may check that out in some other video specified in YouTube. This lecture won't be covering what is pointers and other things. This lecture assumes that you know the basic C++. So if you want some more in-depth videos about the C++, you can comment down and specify that which topic you would need. So most probably I'm skipping these topics because already best contents are available out there on the YouTube for the same topics. Just I'm adding these things because these are not explicitly mentioned in some other videos. So basically what we are doing is whenever we use a new, so to give a basic idea, whenever we use a new, this is dynamic allocation keyword. So what does this keyword do is basically it creates a new class mobile and returns the address of this mobile. So basically pointer stores the address of some uh, basically pointer stores the address of something. So here what we are doing is whenever we use a new mobile variable, this thing, the new mobile. So what is it expecting here is, sorry, what is it returning here is, it is returning an address of that mobile class. But here we are expecting a mobile class object. So this is colliding. So as you can see, conversion from mobile star means mobile pointer to non-scalar mobile is requested, but it is not possible. So if we just add a asterisk here and create a pointer, then it would be accessible. But still, then if you use this dot, it won't support because as we are accessing the data member from a pointer. So if you have to access a data member from pointer, we have to use this arrow notation as mentioned in the error message. So most of the things you will learn from the error message. But yeah, so if I now execute, it will execute as the previous same thing. But now we want to create an object, so we won't use the pointer. We'll directly call mobile m1, which will create an object, and we will be accessing using the dot member. So instead of battery, let's take model number, because let's just execute this battery itself. So here you can see 0, same 0 is printed again. So what are we doing is we are basically creating a class m1, and then we are printing the battery value. So here we have basically set the battery value to 0. So that is why I set initialization values to these variables, because we have to print this. Similarly, you can modify this m1 dot battery to something value. Let's take 100, and let's just see out. So see out m1 dot battery. And if we execute now, you will see 0 and 100. Basically we modify. So this battery is basically a kind of variable, but inside this object. So now as we did the changes in the mobile after creating an object, we can also do some changes here itself. So what we'll do is let's create a function to change this. So let's take set battery, so a method called set battery. So it won't return anything, so let's keep it void, and then set battery would take an input. So let's take amount, and then what we'll do is we'll use battery dot battery equal to this amount. So here what would happen is battery is a general term. So here the battery which we are mentioning is a general term. So we don't know which battery we have to use here. So to specify that, uh, let's okay. Let me just create M1, M2, and M3. Okay. So here basically now I have created three objects: M1, M2, and M3. So there are three objects, and each of them have battery inside them. So M1 has its battery, M2 has its battery, M3 has its battery. But now while I am setting this value, so which value should it change? Should it change for M1, M2, or M3? So more explicitly, if I use M1 dot set battery, so if we use M1 dot battery and give some value, then it should only change the value for M1. So this should be happen every time, and this should be the behavior which we would require. But what if it changes for the other two objects too? So that is not what we want. So to refer that we need the value, we need the change, or we need this variable from the current unique object which we have mentioned. So if we require the battery variable from this M1 itself, so what we can mention here is we can mention a specific keyword called this. So this dot battery would ensure that we are accessing the battery of this amount. Let's just remove this for now and execute. Let's just print the battery, one dot battery. So it is 20. Let's also print m2 dot battery, 0, m3 dot, it is 0 0, won't be visible. Here you can see 20, 0 and 0. So like this we can set the battery, but for, as I said, if we want to ensure that only the current battery should be changed, so we can use this and then uh, this arrow operation. So as we basically discussed, this arrow is required for an pointer. So basically this is a special pointer which refers to the current class. If it is confusing, just ignore that. That would be an part for advanced lecture, but just remember this is a special keyword which is an pointer to the current object, current unique object. Or if it is confusing, just forget that and you can directly use the battery. So like this we can set, but what happens is sometimes we need to set while creating the object itself. uh, for and better, yeah, okay, let's just continue with the same example. So if you're taking a new mobile, what you do is you take a new mobile, you switch on, and then you input your name and do all the things. So basically, you insert your name, age, and Google account, and do these things asked by the Google at the startup of the phone. So what we are doing is we are initializing the mobile, and at the start we are providing all the information to be pre-built to remain there from start while initialization. So similar thing which we can implement is using a constructor. Constructor is a function which is called automatically at the initialization. So whenever I create a mobile M1, that constructor of that class is automatically created. So constructor is an function which can be used to set the initialization values. So here instead of keeping the zeros and empty, we can directly initialize it using a constructor. So basically constructor is nothing but the same name of the class itself. So if you provide the same name without any data type, without any return type, so constructor doesn't return anything. So if you provide no data type and the same as the class name, if you provide and then create a method of that, then it would work as a constructor. So basically constructor can be empty, it can be parameterized. What is parameterized? So, so it may contain some parameters such as int battery, take B for simplicity, then string mn model name, then int h and int w. Of the longer names we can give this. So this is parameterized constructor. So what is parameterized constructor? So here we have parameters which we can directly set. So let's take battery equal to B, then model name equal to mn, height equal to h, width equal to w, and etc. And if we are using this empty constructor, let's just use this, this. Okay, so we are basically initializing the values here. If nothing is given, we can directly initialize that. Here, something like this. Here we have declared them. Here we have initialized, not initial, yeah, here we have initialized them. And here we have initialized from the given values from the user itself. So now what we can do is we can create a mobile M1 and let's just create a function to print the data inside it. So print data, and what this will do is it will basically print the all the data. So let's just see out. First of all, an end line, at last an end line, and between this, let's just output battery. L also. So we can also use spaces, but yeah. Then let's just copy paste this other things, this and this. So here model name, height, width. Yeah. Now we can print. Can use m1 dot print data. So dot would be used to access the data member, and we are accessing the method called print data. So it will just print the data to the screen. So here we can see uh, blank 00. After that, a new line. Also, let's just create a mobile with parameterized constructor. So let's just create m2, and we will be directly giving the values to it. So for the values would be the battery value would be 100. The model name would be, let's say, iPhone 14. Then let's say the height would be, I'm not sure about the height, but let's give 6 inch, and the width would be 5 inch. So now let's just print m2 dot print data, and let's just execute this. So here you can see battery, the values are directly inserted. The values are in the battery value, the battery model name, height and width are directly initialized using this given parameters. So this given parameters are taken as battery, model, height and width, and we can directly print them. So this is how, this is basic things which we may require. So basically these are the data items or the properties. These are the methods which we will be using, and yeah. So these are most of the probable things which are the prerequisites for the next things. So like this we can create the mobile object, and this is the mobile class. So maybe this is all for this session. Let's just not extend this much, and this was a basic overview about the classes and objects. In our next session, we will be starting with the next question. So see you all in the next session. Bye bye.